Yes.
Now, Phil, I understand that you may have come across some insights into the special paint, special order, special paint process, and how that worked in '67.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you talking about the pace car program?
Yeah, that would be a pretty good example.
Okay. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did quite a bit of investigation. Who's heard about these pace cars with this O-1 code on the trim tag? Heard about that? I happen to own one of these cars. So in the 29-year journey of restoring it, I wondered what color they were actually painted, because everybody talked about they made 120 of those cars, and they had clear coat on these cars, and all these native stories that popped up that they just really didn't chime in with common sense. And in getting ready to paint my car, this was years before I actually did it. There's my car. Okay. I did quite a bit of studies to determine what that paint really was, what that O meant, because I didn't want to do it wrong, I wanted to do it right. So as a result, I contacted members of the hobby, and I found several surviving cars that were unrestored, untouched. And from these cars, I received samples of the car that still had the original paint, and for whatever reason, they weren't going to be used in the restoration process, due to the non-suitability of the car or just damage to the vehicle. Here's a piece of the tulip panel, for instance, from an 01 car right here. Okay, very ermine-looking paint, cubic green. And ermine paint is C1, right? C-1 white top. C is ermine in 1967. But yet it says, oh, what's the difference? Why is that? Well, did IR its spectral analysis, put your camera on there, and you take an infrared shot of that paint, and you're able to mix a tint match for that, right? So you mix up ermine white, and you find out ermine white is yellow, black, and white. Then you do the same thing on these surviving paint cars. You take these samples and you shoot those IR spectral, and you get the same result: yellow, black, white. So it's a white paint, right? But what kind of paint is it? So this, of course, got me in a lot of trouble on the internet. Nobody wanted to believe that when my paint people looked at this, and they said, okay, well, we don't know what this is either. Let's just do some experiments. So we did some destructive analysis. We attempted to do destructive analysis. We'll fix this. Guy gets some lacquer thinner out. I'll show you. He starts rubbing on it. Nothing happens. You might as well be rubbing on it with mineral spirits. Wait a minute. You sure this is original paint? Yeah. Rub, 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 rub. Nothing's coming off. I got lacquer over here. Look, look. Rub, rub, rub. All the paint comes off. Wait a minute. That's enamel. I said, can't be. Or we painted lacquer. Lacquer exclusively. I'm telling you, that's enamel. Here, you just saw it. It took the lacquer right off. So, of course, I showed the investigation, and I said, look, this ermine white was enamel for whatever reason on these O cars, and that's going to be the paint color. And, of course, some people, they failed to believe it. Some poor fella painted his car fleet white, brighter white, thinking it was some fleet color, an enamel color from the truck line, but a brighter white. And I had kind of forgotten all about it until I ran into Bob Ruck. Bob Ruck, of course, was the zone manager for the Cincinnati zone. And armed with the actual pace car specification, I was able to sit down with Ruck, 89 years old then in 2014, and unravel the rest of the story. Here's the Parts Smart from May of 1967. And the Parts Smart, contrary to common vernacular, is nobody seems to believe that there was ever a specification on the pace car. Well, yes, there is. It's published by General Motors in April of 1967, made it to ink for the May issue. Here's the specifications for the actual pace car. Camaro convertible ermine white. Says so right there. But why is it an O code? What's special about that ermine white? Now let's look at the evidence. Okay, so here's Ruck's build-out bulletin. Pile of these build-out bulletins, and I specifically asked him about these cars. I said, "You remember anything about the pace cars?" And he goes, "Oh, you mean those ugly cars with the orange stripes?" I said, "No. The ones with the blue band in the front." I said, "Yeah. What about those?" He goes, "Oh, the cover-up cars." And he kind of smiling, putting his cigarette down. He says, "What do you want to know about them?" "I can't tell you a whole lot. I might have a lawyer suing me." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, go to the next page of this build-out bulletin." He says, "They were called specials and special orders." I said, "Specials and special orders?" He goes, "Yeah. So specials are the Pacesetter Camaro and the fleet side sale orders. That's otherwise known as the pace car program, the Pacesetter program. That was the special nose stripe on these cars. Special orders, however, at the bottom says, orders for special paint or tires requiring central office approval and copos previously approved by central office must reach the Mid-East Processing Center no later than Friday, May 26th. It goes on to say, fleet orders requiring special paint, which is set up in the Chevrolet Fleet Paint Book, copo and export options authorized for processing center approval, will be accepted until the end of build-out or until schedules have been filled. And I said, "Wait, what? Export? What?" He goes, "Those are the Canadian cars." I said, "Okay." I said, "What about tires?" He goes, "That was the agreement we had between Firestone and Goodyear. We had to 50-50 those tires because we had an agreement with them. 50% of the tires had to be Goodyear, 50% of the tires had to be Firestone." I said, "You're right." I said, "We've on the pictures that survive from Indianapolis, the commitment fleet has 50% Firestone wide ovals and 50% of them are Goodyear Speedways." And you can tell because the red line is in different places on the tires, so you can see it clearly on the photography. The wide ovals, the outline is way out here, and the Speedways, it's in tight. I said, "Yeah, you're right." I said, "So what about the paint?" He says, "Well, it's a cover-up." He says, "They gave these cars to the IMS people to use basically as a rental fleet for 45 days. He said they weren't entirely sure that they could keep the lacquer good looking for 45 days. Lacquer is very soft. It scratches, it scrapes, and there's really no way to repair it other than paint it." He says, "You try to buff it, you'll buff through." So the solution was to paint these cars in enamel to give them durability and scratch resistance, because our truck and fleet colors were extremely resilient. He says, "You go to our truck line paint and you will find the colors for the pace car right there on our truck line catalog. Every color's there. You just go look and you'll find out I'm right." Puts his cigarette down in the ashtray. "What else do you want to ask me about?" Okay, so sure enough, I did exactly that. He said that there were 120 units made. O1 production was 100 units total for the United States, Indy 500. And all these cars were built Cobo at that time. They had special big radiators, special water pumps, they had special radiator hoses, all for parade use and fleet use. 20 units total were made for the Canadian Mosport Grand Prix. Those were the export cars that went to Canada in June, the June 01 cars. And then finally, the production intent for one car to be made with the export batch that went to A.J. Foyt. So in reality, the story that we were told since Moses was a pup, that there were 120 pace cars made, that's true. There were actually 121 made, because one was made for A.J. Foyt. 100 cars made domestically, about 80 or so cars used at the Speedway. The remainder, 20 or so, went to dealers. So those are the 01 cars that showed up at dealers. And then finally the 20 cars that went for Mosport up in Canada, and then finally the one car that went to A.J. Foyt. As evidence on what it was, we look at the Canadian documentation, because Canada has all the build records. We have here a Canadian Mosport 01 car, 1967 Chevrolet Camaro RSSS 396 Festival pace car, identical to the Indy cars, except made for Canada. What do we have here? 1001AA. That's the number for the special paint. Special order ermine white. Not fleet white, not any other weird color. Clear coat wasn't available, ermine white. Okay, so back to what Bob Ruck said. If we go to the paint codes for 1967, Buick Riviera Arctic White crosses the Cadillac Grecian, crosses the Chevrolet Ermine White, crosses the Corvette Ermine White, Oldsmobile Toronado crosses the Provincial White, Pontiac, pay attention to the word ivory. The same thing down here with Marina Blue. Blue Mist in Buick, Marina Blue in Chevrolet, Marina Blue in Corvette, Bimini Blue in Oldsmobile for the Toronado only, and Blue Metallic in the Pontiac line. So ivory in the Pontiac line, blue metallic in the Pontiac line. Okay? Now, let's look at the 1967 Chevrolet Fleet Book for the trucks, which Ruck said to check. And here's the colors for the pace car in enamel. Ivory, which we just saw, matches ermine white. Blue metallic, which matches Marina Blue. Here's your nose stripe. Your pinstripe is light blue. And light blue matches the bright blue, which is the pinstriping. It's just a different color for the bright blue on the pinstriping right here out of the 1967 book. Case closed. They were enamel. But it was done for durability purposes because enamel, if it's scratched, it can be buffed. Chip resistant, it's a harder finish. So 01 paint is now solved. Now we know why the cars were painted and the 01 was put on the trim tag. Did that answer your question?
Pretty much. This deals essentially with the Norwood findings, though, correct? And I know you're aware that there are also an unknown number of Los Angeles built cars.
All other cars that were not 01 were painted ermine white in lacquer, marina blue in lacquer, bright blue in lacquer. All the other so-called replicas were lacquer cars. So that's the difference. The cars that had to be used for show purposes over a long duration, used basically like a rental fleet, they were done in enamel for durability. Any other questions?
Were any other colors enamel that you can find in 67?
Nothing that strikes me as notable. Enamel could be sprayed out of a what they call a pull pot. It's a 5-gallon pot of paint that you tugged around on a hose, and after you spray it, it goes right through the ovens like a lacquer job. You know, it's not that big of a deal. It will be extra cost, however, because if you're going to do enamel, especially in a special color, it's not impossible, but it's going to be a corporate job or it's going to be an extra cost job. You're going to need some cojones to get this done, because the remaining paint's going to have to be ordered in special for that. The paint's going to have to be provided to Fisher Body. Then you're going to have to delegate a supervisor to take that paint over to Chevrolet, and that specific paint is going to have to be matched to an assembly line operation for the rest of the body over on Chevrolet, or it won't match correctly. So it's going to be costly to do that. It can be done, but it's going to be costly, very costly. You're basically going to have to detail a supervisor or an engineer to make sure that all the cross communications happen for this to occur. Now, in something big like the 67 Pace Car Commitment Program, absolutely they do that. But for a 1Z or a 2Z, it will probably be more cost effective for them to build the car in primer and then repaint the car down in automotive general repair. Just repaint the car Earl Shive style. Pull the moldings off, repaint the car, and then put the moldings back on. Just build the car in primer, which they could do, by the way. They could delete the paint. And when you deleted the paint on the body, it deleted all the paint on the car. In other words, the argent color on the rally wheels, that would be deleted. Okay, all paint was deleted when you deleted paint on the car, when the car was built in primer. And I had many workers say, did you hear about the primer jobs we did? And I said, primer job? Yeah, we built an entire car in primer. Sent them off to Joey Chitwood's race team, for instance, and Chitwood would paint him himself. That's one of the notable people that they were called wanting cars built in primer, because they were going to repaint the cars anyway.